Welcome back to the Iconoclast Music Podcast. I really need to stop calling it that because for 5 episodes, we've changed the name to Greg and Bill's Guitar Uproar. So leave negative comments, please, if I keep saying that, because I need to learn my lesson. So I'm here with my buddy, my great buddy, Bill Linero. Bill, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, it's another good day.
You're looking good.
Thank you. You too.
We're to the listener, we're sitting here on FaceTime, checking each other's situation out, so we're not interrupting. You know, there's always that thing of like, if you're not seeing what the other person's doing, there's an element missing. So I like this format better than we're recording, obviously for the listeners. And we've had a big month. We've had a massively big month with a ton of updates. We took about a month off. We did record an episode last week, but there were some technical difficulties, which made me just say, you know what, let's just do it again next week. We'll have an additional cool-ass thing to talk about, which we'll get into. So, Bill, how's your month been, man? How's it been for you? I mean, you came back from Mexico?
Came back from Mexico, and then a week later went to Tony McAlpine's house to celebrate our birthday together.
But before then, we went to Prairie Sun.
That's right, immediately as soon as I got back. That's right.
Yep.
So I was like, I got engaged on August 8th, and then a week later went to Mexico, spent a week there. The next morning, I got back at 10 o'clock at night on Saturday night. Sunday morning, I drove up at, 8:30 in the morning, meet you at Prairie Sun, spent all day at Prairie Sun, and then the following weekend, and that was great, by the way. That was really cool. I mean, we got a lot done. We're
going to jump into that here.
Yeah, we got a lot done. I mean, we got Jeff there and Sean, and I mean, it was cool. That was a blast. And then
see, you call everybody on a first name basis.
I do, you know.
I'm always still like first and last name. So Sean Morris was an engineer in the late 80s who did like Richie Kotzen, Greg Howe, a bunch of guys at Prairie Sun. Jeff, who Bill is referring to, is Jeff Martin, the drummer of one of the greatest records of all time, Badlands Voodoo Highway, and was the singer in Racer X for the first, 4 records, whatever it was. And then when they reunited, obviously Jeff Martin was back, gave us a great interview.
Yeah.
Mark Muka Rennick,
the owner,
spent 2 days with that crazy bastard.
Yeah, he's a character.
What a great guy.
He's a character, man. He's the type of person you want to see own a recording studio.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump into it. You mind if I jump in real quick?
Let's do it.
So Saturday, I showed up at Prairie Sun, and I'm producing a documentary on Prairie Sun Recording Studio in Northern California, Cotati, California.
Yep.
And Mark Muka Rennick on the back of all the Shrapnel records. I've told this story before, but you always saw executive producer Mike Varney, who was the Spotlight column guy, who started 1,000,000 careers, 1,000. But and then you'd see thanks to Mark Muka Rennick at Prairie Sun Recording Studio. And Bill, you both of us had kind of like a similar, you kind of try to imagine what the person's like, and you try to envision in your head, what is Prairie Sun like? Well, that's the reason, that's the impetus of this documentary. And when I contacted Muka, it was just because you and I had visited the studio. Mm-hmm. You were able to you were kind enough to set up a studio tour in 2018 where you drove me up to Prairie Sun, and I got to meet Muka and another engineer who was there at the time. And, we toured all through the different studios with my little iPhone. I'm like, oh man, this would be great for a documentary. And so just this past year, I contacted him and I said, hey man, well, he was on my podcast. So check that episode out on the previous version of this show. But so Muka was on my show, and this year I was like, you know what, man, let's do a documentary. And so we did. I went up there on Saturday. It was on August 20th, and I shot all day with Muka, did interviews in Studio C. Sean Morris, who was an original engineer for the late 80s, early 90s records, for the Shrapnel records, was there and did an interview. Later on in the day, Jeff Martin showed up from Racer X and Badlands, and then I got to record guitar in Studio B, where all those amazing Shrapnel records were done. The movie's going to start with me, kind of sifting through the records and saying, really why, Mike Varney, I interviewed him in Vegas last month. And then I interviewed Stoney Curtis as well. But everyone's asking me, why do you want to do this documentary? And it was the simple fact of what I just said. You see these names and you hear these records, and you can only imagine the studio where it was recorded. And I got to set up my amp in that studio. So that was my main goal, was take my favorite guitar, my favorite amp, and I want to, look, of course I'd love to record a record in 1988 there, but it's 2021. I mean, we're decades past that. But all I ever wanted to do was set my amp up in that room where all those great records were done. And I freaking got to do that, man. It was amazing. So we spent the day with Jeff Martin, interviewing him. Well, I did. And then you guys ran camera and helped with gear and stuff. Massive help. And then I got to set my my amp up there and record in Studio B. So that'll be kind of like the pinnacle of the movie, where we hit the peak. And then, obviously, we're going to have everyone said super nice things. Everyone I've interviewed has had a similar thing to say, just like you said, super warm. He's a character. When I talked to Muka last week, I said, hey, man, let's talk about the edit of this thing. He goes, well, I don't want to get involved in that at all. I don't really want to tell you what to do. And I said, I want to edit this honestly. You are such a character. You can't build character. That's in that dude's DNA. That's who he is. And he'll fuck with you. And he'll try to get you off your feet a little bit to see, kind of push and pull a little bit. And I feel like those are the best characters anyway. The people you're not quite sure if they're fucking with you. You know what I mean? But then at the same time, his warmth and his integrity, the genuine nature of who he is, just comes out. And so anyway, that's my kind of brief overview. I mean, sure, we'll have a million other things we can talk about, but what about your experience there? Because you actually got to record it, Prairie.
Yeah. When I was a kid, for me, my introduction to Prairie Son was Tony McAlpine. That was when I got the Edge of Insanity album, and that was my introduction to Shrapnel and that whole deal. And I saw that album, and I remember looking on the back of it and seeing, Prairie Son, and recorded in Katati. And funny thing is at the time, my mom was living up in Santa Rosa. So I didn't know where Katati was. I just knew where Santa Rosa was. And I remember going up there and seeing that Katati was right near. It's only a couple of towns over. You have Roner Park in between, and then you have Katati. And I remember as a kid, I drove by there, and there's a gate. There's a gate on the front entrance. And I remember thinking, God, what's going on behind those gates? What could possibly...
What year would this have been? Early 90s?
Yeah. And I just remember thinking, who could possibly be there, right?
Yeah.
And
it was somebody killer too.
Oh,
no
I'm
doubt.
sure, yeah. So and I wanted to go inside. And so I called him up and I said, well, I thought, well, how could I get inside? So I called him up and got a tour of the studio. And the rate was $1,000 a day at that time. And I was like, yeah, it's not going to happen, right? But I remember just driving up through that gate and just being enamored. My first ever trip to actually be invited to go to Prairie Son was a friend of mine was friends with Marty Friedman. So Marty invited my friend to go to the studio and sit in while he was mixing music for Speeding. So we went there, and I remember going there and going, holy shit, I'm actually being invited. I'm coming here. I wasn't invited by Marty, but I was my friend Frank. And so I get a phone call that night afterwards from Marty after we had gone, to the session. He says, hey, you want to come back tomorrow? And I said, yeah, definitely. So I ended up going back by myself and hanging out with Marty all day. The next time I went there was to actually mix my album, Defiant Machine, in the same room that Marty mixed music for Speeding. And then a few years later, went back and recorded in Studio B, which is the Stone Room, the Shrapnel Room, recorded an album there. And then just a few months ago...
Was Simon Phillips?
No, not on that session. Simon,
I got you.
Simon was in June or July of this year. We went in with Simon Phillips in Studio C and recorded 4 songs in there with him. And we're going to go back hopefully soon with him. So I've been in every room. I've worked in every single room at Prairie, and it's just an amazing experience. And when I was there the first time mixing Defiant Machine, I stayed on the property for 5 days. So we stayed in the cottage house where all the Shrapnel guys stayed. When they were there, everybody stays in the cottage house. And then this last time I was there, I just got a hotel. But it's and now I live close enough to where I can drive back and forth. So
Right. Yeah. Well, so we're gonna probably likely circle back to Prairie Sun, but this guy. So you set up. Let me just back up. So you work with Simon Phillips, and you were the reason why I'm happy to work with you on let's call it casting. Really,
Yeah.
you helped me set up the Tony McAlpine interview. I mean, you definitely set that up, and the Simon Phillips. So I would say that you're gonna get a credit on casting,
Yeah,
camera
I'll take it.
operation.
I'll take it.
But then, so we got to visit this guy.
Yeah.
Sans the big 1980s hair this
Yeah.
past weekend.
Yeah, Tony.
So Tony McAlpine did an interview for this. I mean, so far this movie has some killer players. Last week I interviewed Rudy Sarzo, who did Project Driver with Tony McAlpine. Doug Pinnick, who did the Pinnick Gales Prigin Records. Pluralized the wrong thing. Prigin Records there. Rudy Sarzo, Doug Pinnick, Tony McAlpine, Simon Phillips, Jeff Martin, Mark Mukarenik, Mike Varney. Shit, there's a million people I'm missing.
Sean
Morris. Duh, yeah.
Stoney Curtis.
Stoney Curtis, of course. I'm in the movie because obviously I'm the narrator and I'm opening and closing the movie. You're in the movie because you're recording in the Tom Waits room. Shane Alexander will be doing an acoustic, like a tribute to Tom Waits at his studio, and he was kind enough to lend his studio for the Rudy Sarzo interview. In the Thousand Oaks, because we're just in neighboring towns. I'm in Camarillo, he's in Thousand Oaks, and Rudy's down the freeway a little bit. So it all is working out, man. And we spent the weekend with Tony, and I always heard your stories about your relationship with Tony McAlpine, and I completely underestimated the camaraderie. I guess I don't know the ball busting nature of your relationship, because honestly, it reminded me of being back home in Pittsburgh, where if you're not busting someone's balls, they don't like you. They probably don't like you.
Yeah.
They don't want to be around you. If someone's not busting your balls, they don't want to be around you. And when they do, that's how they show love, and that's how they show you're their bro, man. So anyway, as soon as I walked in, I had my vaccine card, I had my mask on and my COVID negative test. And Tony said, "Take that off, man.
Yeah.
You're good. Come on in, and let me help you set up." And I pulled my car in his garage, and immediately, just a super nice, warm guy, like one of the people I've known for years. So anyway, tell me about your relationship with Tony. Go back to the beginning and touring and all that.
Well, so let's rewind all the way back. So in San Jose, they had a guitar show one year that was supposed to be like a Namm style show. And for those people who don't know, Namm is a National Association of Music Merchants, where all the music merchants from around the world gather and musicians gather, and everybody just kind of mingles and all that stuff. Well, San Jose had one time, and I remember walking down the aisle, and I had just heard of Tony, right? So I'm walking down one of the aisles, and Tony comes walking towards me. And at the time, I had created this guitar pick where I had drilled holes into the pick to where, when you sweat, the sweat goes inside the holes. Later on, another pick company came out with it. But I remember showing it to Tony, and the very first thing he said to me was, "What do? Hold it in your hand and drill it?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, "I put it on a drill press." That was literally my first meeting with Tony. Fast forward a few years, maybe 5-6 years later, and he's doing a guitar clinic at Union City, and I went to it and met him, and it was great. Just got a couple of pictures signed by him, and that was the extent of that. Found out, later Tony was going to be playing a show here in Oakland. He was going to be playing 2 shows here in Oakland. Or one in Oakland and one in San Jose. My band Lanero managed to get on both those shows back to back, night after night. The second night, I met, and Tony didn't remember me from Adam. He didn't know who the hell I was. But the second night we played, and Tony's manager, Mike Mesker, came to me and he said, "Hey," he says, we're going to be going out on tour for a month. Would you guys be interested in coming out as a support band? And I said, oh, absolutely. Of course, I figured I wouldn't hear from him again. That would be the end of it.
What year was this?
That was 2014. So I got the email from Mesker, and he said, hey, we're going out. These are the tour dates. This is the routing. You guys still down? And I said, absolutely.
Wow.
So we went out with Tony for a month, and the first night, we met up with him was in Colorado. The band, it was Achilles, Priester on drums, Bjorn Englund on bass. They pulled.
Oh, that's how you know Bjorn.
Yep.
I keep forgetting.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they came, met him at the hotel, and Tony was tired. He ended up going back to the hotel. We all went out to dinner. It was the next night that me and Tony really started to talk, and then we did that tour, and during that tour, Tony and I really bonded. I bonded with everybody in the band, but Tony and I really connected on a deeper level. And then he said, hey, I want you guys to come out with us next time. So it was like, 2015, June, we went out with him again, did another, month tour with him on the road, went to Mexico. And then 2019 again, he said, hey, I want you guys to come back out with us. So we went out again for a third tour. So I've toured with Tony for 3 different times, 3 months, and in that time you connect with people. And for Tony and I, he's more like a brother, like a true brother to me. Like I look at him as a brother. We've had many deep existential talks, and when we were on the 2019 tour, Tony had to do the Yes tour, the Yes cruise, out in the Caribbean, Key West and Cozumel. So he invited me to go out with him. So I went out. It was just me, Tony's band, and and every night Tony, and every morning, he'd call me in the phone, hey, let's meet for breakfast. So I'd meet him for breakfast, and we'd hang out, and then we'd walk around the whole ship, and we were pretty much inseparable the entire time. It was, and he was going through that thing with his wife. He was going through the passing of his wife.
Totally.
She hadn't passed yet, but she was dealing with cancer, and so I'm glad that I was there for him, to be supportive for him, and as I know he would be for me.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you my opinion. Yeah. Well, my approach to the whole thing is always professionalism when I meet someone new, and I never like to let on, historically how much you're a fan. Like go back to those early records. I got Joe Satriani surfing with the Alien first, and then I got Tony McAlpine, Maximum Security. That was definitely the order. And it's funny because I have been using for this movie, I've been using these vinyl records as the props that will go from one artist to the next. I got the Project Driver record in time, but I didn't get Maximum Security in time, which I've always had on cassette. But I finally just got it today. It showed up. And but I remember... It's funny because I think there are a few piano songs on here, piano only. And when we were numbskull kids in the little town of Butler, I grew up in Pennsylvania, I'll tell you what, it's funny these days, but we probably like jackasses back in the day. We would, as opposed to doing like crank up the heavy tunes, we'd crank up the piano tunes, pretend like we were air pianoing on the fucking dashboard of the car. You know what I mean?
Right.
Driving up and down our little town on a Friday night. Yeah. Just stupid. I mean, it's funny thinking back on it now because it probably looked hilarious.
Well, yeah. And, for me, it's just like, Sunday when we were meeting you for breakfast, right? And, you texted me, you said, hey, man, I'm up. And I said, yeah. I said, me too. I said, let's get some breakfast. And, Tony gets up and he says, hey, you hungry? And I said, yeah, I'm starving. He's all right, let's get some food. We're going to meet Greg. And I said, yeah. So he gets up, goes into a studio, and he starts playing piano. And I'm like, are we going to get breakfast? Yeah, just let me warm up for a few minutes. I'm like, okay. So I sit down and I'm watching him play piano. And a few minutes turned into 10, turned into 20, turned into 45, turned into an hour. And
that's killer, though.
Now, exactly. So I'm sitting there
if it were 1985 and you were 18 years old, right?
Dude, so that's what was going through my head, right? That's what was going through my head. And I'm sitting there thinking, if you would have told my 16-year-old self that I would be sitting here with Tony in his house, in his studio, after we had just woken up, and he's playing piano for an hour, I would have been like, you're out of your mind. you know? So I had to
There's
keep
no way,
reminding
yeah.
myself that, you know, I'm privileged that I got to sit there and watch him. And not only that, I was asking him questions like, hey, you know, what's the difference between romantic music and classical music? And not only did he tell me, but he showed me. And it was just like a one-on-one lesson type thing. And I don't play piano, you
Yeah.
know? So it
Yeah.
was very, very cool. And it was one of those things where you're like, yeah, this is awesome.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we talk about that too. It's like I've look when you work in the music business as your profession, you have to be professional. You cannot open up the 18-year-old version of yourself to the person that you're sitting across from. And I've gotten to work with a ton of legends.
Yep.
People that when I was, you know, a teenager, you know, my mid-teens, 13, 14 years old, whatever, when you crank those records when you're a little kid and then you get to work with that person when you're older or someone that was on the record, you cannot ever go back to that version of yourself and say, hey, man, you know, and just fan out on them. So you have to maintain a profession. You must maintain professionalism. It just has to happen that way. And so, you know, the thing about it is Tony didn't let you get to that point.
No.
He doesn't let you get to that point, which I like it. And, you know, really thinking about everyone else that I get to work with. So I spent a day with Doug Pinnick last week. Doug kind of doesn't either. So I'll just tell you real quick. So I interviewed Doug for this movie, and I've worked with Doug before on some other things and have known him because of other friends. And, you know, we worked the Namm show, and, you know, he was at the Tech 21 booth, and, you know, just a bunch of stuff, had dinners with him. And I did some videos for Tommy Baldwin, and Doug came to my house. It was really, you know, just one of those things where you're going, freaking Doug Pinnick is in my house right now. This is killer. But they never let you feel like that. And you just get the notion that, man, everybody's exactly the same. We're all in the same boat together, rowing the same direction of, you know, trying to keep music alive and keep music going. And that's one of the themes that kept coming up in interviewing Tony. And then when you got on the couch and were interviewed as well, is like, this is really just to enrich the next generation in what we did, you know, while we're all, you know, still kicking, still alive. That was my music that I listened to growing up, and it's what created the music that I make. It just is what I'm about. I mean, that's how I was groomed by that music. So to see these guys, you know, and Tony's like 61, I think.
Yeah.
Went through cancer treatment successfully, and, you know, is such a positive and funny dude. And really, you kind of, those thoughts, you know, anybody out there that ever meets their heroes, they really are cool. They're all really super cool. But you have to remember that we all are all the same. We're all human.
That's right.
You know, so people have bad days. So if you meet your hero and he's, you know, whatever, but remember that everybody has bad days, but everybody's cool. We're all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
And that's the impression I got from, you know, I always get that from Doug. Now I'll tell you real quick. I sat down in Doug's studio, and Doug's like, yeah, the new King's X record is done. I'm like, oh man, I got to hear some of that. Obviously I'll turn my phone off and everything's off. You know, you don't have to worry about anything leaking. But he's like, well, I can't really talk about it too much, but I'll let you listen. So 2 songs turned into 6 and almost 7 songs.
Wow.
I listened to more than half that record, and it's fucking amazing. King's X fans will not be disappointed as to will King's X be bringing it. Doug is singing amazingly. They're all singing great, and they're all playing great, and it sounds really, really great. I can't wait to get the new King's X record. And so anyway, Doug was gracious enough to let me listen to that. And so I think, yeah, meet your heroes. Remember, they're just people too. And Tony Mcalpine was no different. He was just such a cool, down-to-earth, normal person. I mean, you know, we didn't talk about music. I want to say that, you know, 75% of that time we did not talk about music. And in fact, when I wasn't interviewing him for the movie, we didn't talk about music at all.
I rarely talk about music with him, you know, and I like it that way. Yeah, it's just more about life, you know, motorcycles, which he's big into.
You got to drive his Jag super fast. That
was cool, dude. It's the first time I ever drove that thing. That was cool. He told me to punch it, and then when I punched it, he's like, simmer down. You know?
He encouraged you to drive the car fast, which I liked.
He did. I think I got it to 90.
And I was in the back seat with all that weight shifting back and forth. Totally. I could feel it I think I was the one that felt that car's power the most.
I think so.
Being in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool.
That
though.
was a fun weekend, though,
Yeah.
man. I appreciate you hooking that up.
Yeah,
for
dude,
sure.
absolutely, man.
All right, let's jump on to the next topic, which is a commercial break. We'll be back after these messages.
This podcast sponsored by Strap Tight Strap Locks, the most secure, affordable guitar strap locks on the market. Install and remove in under 2 seconds. No need for any tools. Endorsed by legends such as Joe Satriani, Glenn Hughes, Carl Verheyen, and more. Get yours at straptight.com.
And we're back. Thanks to our sponsor, Strap Tight Strap Locks. As always, they are an amazing product, and I'm happy to have them sponsor the show. And that's Bill's company, so you could see the affiliation there.
Yeah, a little bit. But you know what? We're proud to.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool, man. Hope I'm still an artist. I think I am. You gave me a bunch of
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Joe Satriani. Yeah,
Yep.
maybe that's the only.
Andy Timmons.
What's that?
Andy Timmons.
Oh, Andy Timmons.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah, Andy Timmons.
I love Andy Timmons.
Carl Verheyen, Glenn Hughes, Adrian Gallish.
Hey, speaking of Joe Satriani, we lost another legend of the music business, Mick Brigden, who was Joe Satriani's longtime manager, in a freak accident, which is, now it's out in the public, and folks have talked about, how Mick passed. But, I got to meet him and, exchanged some words with him in 2017 for the G4, Joe Satriani G4 event. What a nice guy. What a sweetheart. And it's a huge loss to the industry.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard the news, I was devastated. I was hoping, praying it wasn't true, but unfortunately it was. And every time I met Mick, every time I saw him, big smile. He always had a big smile, always greeted me with a hug. And he was just a great guy. We'd always talk about golf. And just, he's one of those guys in the industry that, this industry spits people out, chews them up and spits them out. But he's one of those guys that he's been around forever. He was, Rolling Stones tour manager, Humble Pie. I mean, the guy's a legend, Bob Dylan, so he's as legendary as the guys he was managing. So it's and I can only imagine what his wife, it was a tragic accident. It shouldn't have happened, but things happen for whatever reason. Unfortunately, 2 days later after he passed, the wife had to put the dog down, which is horrible. And I can only imagine what she's going through, what Joe's going through. This is a guy who's guided Joe's career for 33 years. So it's big transitions, big changes for sure for everybody.
Yeah, Tony McAlpine was kind of talking about some things about, when you get older, your friends start passing around you and, you feel like you're the only one, there and stuff. It's like, man, that's, I don't like to think about that.
No.
I definitely don't like to talk about that. I like to keep it positive and always keep busy, so I don't have to, you don't have to face that inevitable reality, but I will say that, clearly the world was a better place with Mick Brigden in it. And
the music world
all the legends we lost this past year. It's a tragic loss to the music industry. And let's pump the brakes on, amazing, people leaving us. And let's just hope we get some more, some more quality time with the good people of planet Earth.
Yeah.
But, how do you segue out of that? I'll try my best.
Well,
which is there is no good segue out of that.
Well, when people pass, it's so easy to focus on their passing instead of focusing on their life and what they contributed and
absolutely.
what they brought to you and the world. So, I mean, with Mick, let's remember, what he brought to this world, which was
Definitely.
great music and integrity and honor and a smile and love for all things good, golf, his family, music, wine, animals, biking. He was let's remember that.
Hey, let's change direction here. So we're going to get into something that is, man, I've taken a month off social media. I posted one time, and that was a picture that when we were at the restaurant with Tony McAlpine, all four of us got together. Mark, which I'm forgetting Mark's last name, but Mark worked with Steve Vai at the Mothership and went on tour with Steve Vai. And knew Dave Weiner really well, and has been integral in the music business. What's Mark's last name? Do you
Dawson.
remember?
Mark Dawson.
Great guy. Yeah, Mark Dawson. That's right, because we said Richard Dawson.
Yeah.
And I always make stupid jokes to try to remember someone's last name and forgot my reference. So, but anyway, I posted that one picture, but I haven't posted for about a month because I feel like there's a heartburn that I have with social media right now. And, really it started with kind of a weird stalkerish thing that happened that I had to just shut down my page for a minute and decided, you know what, why am I posting daily content to these social media outlets where I'm getting nothing in return? You can kind of see the passage of time and you're going, I'm feeding this machine that's not helping me in any way. I mean, it's a nice connection with people, but I think I'm really, when my new record comes out, I'm going to obviously still use it, but I'm going to make sure that my YouTube channel is well stocked with new content. And that's where, look, yes, it's definitely not as many engagements as Facebook and Instagram. It's definitely not. And I still will feed those, but not as regularly because, there's no return on my investment of time to those platforms. And it seems, and years ago I did, place ads on Facebook. And it seems that lately with the, them shutting down music in regards to, being able to share to as many people. Like I used to always have a couple thousand views within a few days, regularly on my videos, no matter what the video was. Now it's like, in 2 days, it's like 70 something. It's like, okay, we get it. I post a picture of my dog. It gets 300 likes, comments, and a ton of shares. I post a picture of my music and no one sees it. No one gets to view that. And it's just getting worse. It's like, I feel like it's like, Nazi Germany or something. Like, it's like, fine, if you don't, and what that does to me, it's almost like I relate it to someone that doesn't call me back that I'm trying to give business to. Okay. If they don't call me back, they're not serious enough about my business, me being a client, and my money, that if I did hire them, I would expect the same. Them not calling me back or returning, or following up on any potential problems I might have on a job. I feel like Facebook's the same way. I've been a customer of theirs. I've given them money. And yet they're shutting down the one avenue that I have to connect with a lot of people. And I just feel like it's getting worse. And why? And for what? It's like, fine, if you don't want my business, it's the same feeling I get as someone not calling me back for business that I've called. Okay, if you want to shut me down every time I feed you this free content, and I always make sure my content looks good, sounds good, and if they want to shut that down, then fine. You're not going to get any more of my content. I'll give it all to YouTube. I'll put it all on gregmara.com. I encourage everyone, please, if you wouldn't mind, please go check out my gregmara.com page, because that's where I actually get a return on my investment. If I sell one of my signature distortion boxes, or if I sell t-shirts, I get something back from that. So as an artist, the only way I get money is if I go tour and sell t-shirts on the road. You don't get any money from ticket sales. You sell t-shirts on the road, or if I sell a signature distortion box on my page, or if I sell shirts direct. So if I buy a t-shirt for $9 printed and it's a quality t-shirt, I always make sure it's quality material. It's this nice soft t-shirts. All the sizes will fit. You can wash them 1,000,000 times and they'll never shrink. The artwork's always going to stay looking great. I get the same amount back, and maybe a little less if I have to ship it, because I try not to pop that in there. I give people, the break on shipping. So, I'll make $5 or $6 each t-shirt. Imagine that. Imagine how many t-shirts I have to sell in order to make a proper wage. So as musicians, we're all pulling from wherever we can grab, whatever we can get, to not have to go out and slug it out in a job that we don't want to do. We want to create. We're creatives. We want to be able to connect with people in an artistic way, but we still have to make money. So I see Facebook and Instagram as kind of an enemy right now, kind of an enemy to the artist, and I don't mind saying that. So you had a similar experience. That's the end of my rant.
Yeah.
So just today you posted something that Ashley pissed me off, and I usually don't get pissed off at anything ever.
Yeah. So, I posted, a few weeks ago that, I got engaged 5 weeks ago. And that post got 482 likes, something like that, and like 350 comments. And, I haven't responded to anybody in the comments. I just went through and, liked all their replies. So today I thought, I'm going to go through and I'm going to thank everybody individually. And I got about a quarter of the way through, and the pop-up message comes up and says, "You're limited on your comments. You have to wait." And I'm like, what is this? So I did a little research, and I have to wait 24 to 48 hours to comment on my own post, to thank people on my own post, when Facebook has millions of spammers on their page. Millions. I mean, I get friend requests from spam accounts twice a day, every single day. There's hate speech out there from terrorist groups that are allowed to post, yet I can't comment on my own post. I can't go through and individually thank people because they're saying that's spam. That is the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. And, it's one of the reasons why I don't post a lot. I mean, I don't go on Facebook and scroll through the feed. I don't, comment, because I'm like, every time I do that, I give Facebook, money on ads and everything else. And speaking of ads, I will never, ever buy an ad on Facebook ever again, because I had a friend of mine that spent about $1,000 buying ads on Facebook. And he was noticing that he was getting no traffic whatsoever. And he was sending the traffic to his Facebook business page. And he was noticing that he wasn't getting any traffic there. So he started to look at the results. 98% of all of his ads were being placed on GoDaddy parked pages in Egypt. So, there's no rule, or there's no guidelines in there or stipulations in their agreement that says they're going to place your ads on active running pages in the United States. You can say in the United States, but he did worldwide. So because he has a company that's worldwide. So all these ads were being placed in Egypt, 98% of them in Egypt. And so they took his money basically, and he got no return whatsoever. I will never place an ad for Strap Tight on there. I will never do that. Same with Instagram. It's all crap.
Well, what it's making me think is that everything is going to come full circle. I mean, when we were kids, how you found out about things was monthly. It wasn't instantly like it is now. And that, unfortunately, when someone passes in the music business, that's the instant way to find out about it. And then you can, instantly see that everybody's posting, rest in peace, whoever. But, when we were kids, it was Metal Edge, Circus, and, all those other magazines that you'd have to wait each month to find out the news, or,
that's right.
Or what new records were coming out. And it was like it was like a 3 to 6 month, period where you're trying to figure out what the new music is. And, I can't wait until, and it always seemed like you could count on it in the fall. Hopefully I'm remembering this correctly. It always seemed like in September there would be new records out, like right as the fall school season started. And then it seemed like in the spring you'd have new records, because that was right before the summer touring season. And I feel like, this can actually, I would like to morph this into our current state of touring, since I spoke about touring. And Bill, you have a show coming up in West Hollywood. Now, the Troubadour has just said, and this is a lot of venues, because Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, both tested positive for COVID. And there are bands that are posting, you know what? We're shutting it. The guy, Monkey from Korn tested positive. And, they're getting replacement players. But the thing is I see other bands that are shutting it down until next year, until we're beyond this. And even Namm, the Namm show, has said June 3rd through 5th will be the next Namm show in Anaheim.
Yeah, which is crazy.
So that's next summer. So they're waiting. So basically everyone, think about, and I try to explain this to somebody else, like, think about the money that's exchanged. I think it's like $10,000 minimum just to rent like a 12 by 12 space on the Namm show floor in Anaheim.
Cost us
Not to mention you got to pay your employees. Yep. You got to pay for all the hotel rooms, any food, any travel. You're into 50, 60 grand as a tiny company. So there's a lot of money turning for the Namm show. So if they're saying it's going to be summer 2022 before they're going to have a show with 100,000 people or whatever it's going to be, maybe even scaled back at the Anaheim Convention Center, they must feel pretty good about the committees must feel pretty good about where we're going to be in this pandemic. Now, local clubs like the Oxbow Theater, when we were in Santa Rosa, we were going to see Billy Idol. Well, I had side stage. But within 48 hours of the show, you had to have a negative COVID test and be fully vaccinated and show your card. Okay, so that's the Oxbow Theater, and I believe it's in Santa Rosa, wherever, Napa County, Napa up there. So the Troubadour this morning just posted there are shows coming up, and it's the same thing. Within 48 hours of the show, you have to have a negative. It can't be just something that you go to the drugstore and get the quick test, the 15-minute test. It has to be a written test with your name on it, and that's within 48 hours. So that means you have to pay whatever the money is if you don't have. I think there are free tests out there now, but it's like so. And you have to be fully vaccinated, and all these hoops you got to jump through. So I know you have a show coming up, and that's at the Whiskey in November with Last in Line, and people will be masked, and hopefully you'll have good attendance, because it's just, man, right now to make money as a musician, it is absolutely fucked.
Yeah,
because of all the damn hoops we got to jump through, but we're all still doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, we all still have the heart to still put into doing this with a zero return on investment and likely a loss on our investment.
I don't know if you saw, but Steve Vai is going out on tour.
In February of next year.
Yeah, is it February? I think the very first show is Vegas. Vegas is the very first show. I thought it was January, but it might be February. But yeah, I mean, I was surprised because I was hearing that he was not going to tour at all. So,
I heard something similar, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, everything is up in the air. I mean, we have a show next month in Sunnyvale here, October 10th, and then we have the show November 17th at the Whiskey, and another show March 5th at the Whiskey. So, I mean, these are shows though that have been rescheduled. That these shows should have been back in 2019, 2020. So at this point, I'm not even counting on them. We're rehearsing, we're doing all that, but I'm not even counting that they're going to be actually going through with these shows. They may just be canceled again.
Yeah, it's likely. But I think the thing is it kind of circles back to my thing, and I'm going to say it again. I don't mind. I have no shame. This is my podcast as well as yours. GregMarra.com, GregMarra.com. Please go there and buy something from me. Because this is the way we keep out of, having a day job where we have to edit, countless videos of someone's, graduation or their wedding. This is how I don't have to become a wedding videographer.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like, you don't want to do that.
I mean, I could do it, but the thing is I don't want to do that. I want to maintain my career as a musician and artist, and I'm producing this movie, which I'll have it on Amazon and iTunes, definitely Amazon, likely iTunes, and there'll be more income there. But man, it's just tough. It's just tough as a musician. So go support your local musician, man. Buy something. Everybody's got $25 to buy a T-shirt. Just go do it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
Go to BillDeNiro.com and buy what do you have on your site?
I got nothing.
You have a new book.
Yeah, I got a book.
Yeah, you do. You have a new book on Amazon, don't you?
On Amazon, yeah, Crazy Facts.
What's that about?
So it's over.
The title tells it all.
Crazy Facts. It's just a book about facts, 75 different categories ranging from aircraft to zoology. I mean, or zodiac signs. I mean, it's everything in between. Took me 4 months of 14-hour days compiling, researching, cross-checking, cross-referencing facts, and and just putting it all together, designing the book, laying it out, and because I wanted a book of facts that I can't find anywhere else. Because usually when I find a book of facts, it's usually there's a lot of crap in there, and it's just not laid out well. There's no categories. This book weighs 2.9 pounds, has over 7,500 facts, 683 pages, if I got that right. So it's a big book. It's it's thick.
That's killer, man. What else do you have on your site?
I don't have anything else for sale on there. I used to.
CDs?
No,
Shirts?
all that stuff's available on iTunes and Amazon and all that stuff. I am thinking about putting out kind of like the Defiant Machine, but with bonus tracks on it for a couple of reasons. But yeah, just to get some tracks on there, demo tracks, things like that. And that's the beauty of being, distributing yourself. You can do that. You can get it out there and do that. The downside of that is there's a lot of stuff out there that shouldn't be available that kind of floods the market and people, don't get,
sure does.
They don't make their way to your music.
Right.
But if they want to find you, they'll find you.
Yeah. You're going to build your audience.
Yeah.
And it's going to spider out and, with, let's touch on animals as leaders with those guys having millions of followers or whatever.
Yeah.
I'll take 10% of that, whatever.
Right.
But my new record's going to be coming out too. And I'd love to do a limited print on vinyl. I'd love to be able to send it to like Rat Pack Records and get like a proper package put together. But, for me, it is definitely still independent. And I don't mind it being that way still because Tony just released his new record, Equilibrium, Tony McAlpine, which is, folks, please, if there's any way you can buy it, I know you can stream it. Check it out. It's freaking amazing. And, I'm not really a huge fan of instrumental music at this point in my life. I like vocals and music. But this is a great record. It's very thematic, like you would expect from Tony McAlpine. It's really super interesting and very layered. All the tones are great. So you're going to want to listen to it a bunch of times on different systems, crank it up in your car, stick the earbuds in, and studio monitors in my studio sound amazing. So, but he just released his new record.
Yeah. He played all the bass, guitars, keyboards on it. And then the drummer from Megadeth, Dirks, I don't remember his name. He's the drummer on it.
He's a great drummer too, man. It sounds really good, mixed and mastered really well. So, but I'll tell you a funny story. So when I put my artwork together for my new record called Reflexive, I just had my son take a picture in my studio. And then I sent the artwork to the guy who does all of my artwork. Since I've known him since 7th grade. His name is Bryce Carpenter. And his company, by the way, is carcographics.com. He does all my shirts. He does all my artwork. He's done all of my records, all of the album covers for my records, except for, the first one too. Not the original pressing of my first one, the second, the re-release of my first record. But he's done all of my artwork, all of my logos, everything. So Bryce Carpenter, if you're out there, man, big props to you because you're an awesome artist. Carcographics.com. But I sent the picture to him and I said, hey, man, you know what would be killer? The record's called Reflexive. If you could put me on the earth with, like the planets in the back and kind of the color scheme would be like bright colors, everything kind of exploding at once kind of thing. Not exploding, but, the colors, very bright and vibrant colors. And then Tony McAlpine, check this out. This is before I met him, anything, nothing. Like a week later, he's like, my new record's coming out and here's the artwork. And I'm like, oh my God, it's exactly the same concept. It's near the same concept. It's like the same artist could have just put him in place of me. Yeah. Like it's really close. So I was going, oh shit, what the fuck am I going to do, man? And so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do anything. There's no way I'm going to ever meet Tony McAlpine. There's no way he's going to see this. We have the same friends and shit, but I don't think it's going to turn into anything. Well, fast forward to last weekend where I'm sitting in Tony McAlpine's living room and on my laptop is a sticker for my new record because I got a bunch of stickers made up and Tony's sitting 2 feet away. I said, hey man, can you see this picture right here? And he's like, you know what? I can't see that at all. I would need my glasses. I can't see shit. So I'm like, oh, well, that's good news. And so I said, that's my new record. And I explained to him what happened. He's like, he kind of didn't say anything. He's like, didn't give a fuck. Yeah. He kind of didn't give a fuck and let it go, go right over his head, And that's funny because not only did I not ever expect to meet Tony McAlpine, but given the circumstances, I never expected to be sitting in his fucking living room with my artwork on my laptop with him a foot away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's fucking fun.
I've always done my own album artwork. I mean, I've always
you're great.
Thank you. From start to finish, I mean, the concept, the layout, everything. Send it off to the manufacturer. I mean, it just it started out a necessity, and I was like, why am I going to pay somebody else to do it? It's like I know
you're
exactly.
You're a great
what
artist,
I want.
man.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're a great artist, and I'm hoping you're going to help me with the artwork for the movie. So
I will.
we're not going to have it's not physical, but you got to have the regular what would be like the DVD case,
Totally, yeah.
and you got to have the 16:9
Yep.
widescreen version of
Yeah.
it. So I got to get it all together, and man, this movie has been. It's one like I got to take it one step at a time,
Yeah.
and so my mindset right now is collecting data, collecting interviews, researching, and I'm writing the script.
Yeah.
So I'm writing my own script, and because my narrative will tie the whole thing together.
Of course.
You know what I mean? It'll glue it all together, because otherwise, whenever I do any project, it's always, like especially like a narrative for like a movie. For me, it's like you want to, especially with a documentary. Why are you doing this? And then you want to introduce all the characters, how some of those characters might tie in, some interesting points. And for a documentary, I've seen almost every one of them out there on that relates to music, but there's always like this massive thing that happens that is like, oh, I can't believe that happened, and it all almost fell apart. And my movie's not going to have that. My movie's going to have, I always wanted to just record in the studio. And, this studio has created thousands of artists through Mike Varney and Muka and them all recording there. I could not possibly tell 150 records on Shrapnel multiplied by 4 or 5 people in the band.
Yeah.
And then all the engineers. You can't tell that story in an hour and a half. I already have 15 hours worth of video interview footage that I can't include. So what I'll have to just say is these are the people that I know, and some of them are direct, like that's in my contact list. These are the people that I know and have worked with that have worked there. And then some are like, one friend has helped me get there. And really the only person that's been has been Tony Mcalpine. I know everybody else in the movie that I named. And it's like, it's a direct connection to the person that's been there. Well, it just so happens that Rudy Sarzo worked with Tony McAlpine, Simon, and Simon Phillips was another one that you helped me out with, and they worked with you, and you're in the movie as well. So you kind of glue those little stories together, and of course there's going to be a lot missing. There are people that I wanted to get for the movie that just are not making themselves readily available. And there's a like all the like I think Exodus Bonded by Blood was recorded there.
Oh wow!
Like there's some fucking legendary metal and thrash records that were done there that I'm not touching on that. My whole story is going to be Mike Varney, Muka, Shred, the Shrapnel Records days, and I almost want to call it the Shrapnel Records days.
Yeah, I know.
Or the studio that built 1,000 careers.
Yeah,
something like that. I don't exactly have a title for it, but that's kind of where I'm thinking, where I'm going with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people that can be involved in this. You mentioned Exodus. I mean, the Bay Area guys. Gary Holt went on to play with Slayer, but he was still in Exodus. And I mean, look at the connection with Exodus and Metallica. I mean, that was Kirk Hammett's band. He was a guitar player in that band. And what's fun, you're talking about social media, right? And information, boom, boom, boom. So last night, Metallica played their very first show at 783 days live 2 miles from my house. I didn't even know about it at a small little club. I had no idea. And I'm seeing posts on Instagram from the local radio station, The Bone, Metallica live right now. And I'm like, how did I not hear about this? It's 2 miles from the house. I'm on social media. I had no idea. So stuff still slips by sometimes.
Yeah.
But there is that connection, right, to the Bay Area thrash bands that all recorded at Prairie Sun as well. I mean, Metallica's recorded there.
Well, I got to tell you, I was listening to, I think you may know this guy. Not Joe Barresi. Joe Barresi is a famous engineer producer, but it was his interview through that Dean. Oh, fuck. What's the podcast? He's a Bay Area guy too. What's that?
Not Joe Rogan.
No, his name's Dean something. I'm forgetting his name. I love his podcast.
I don't know.
Del Rey. Dean Del Rey.
Dean Del Rey. Okay. I don't know who that is.
But he was interviewing Joe Barresi, and I'm listening to this interview, and they're talking about fucking Prairie Sun.
Oh,
so
wow.
Dean Del Rey knows all that history, and I would like to possibly get Joe Barresi in this movie too, just from a fan's perspective, because he talked about all those records. They talked about Cacophony, and it was cool, man, and how he, when he wanted to moved to California, he messaged Muka. He sent he either called him or something, like he connected with Muka and said, "Hey, I'm gonna go to LA first, because if I go to Prairie Sun first and I lose the job, there's no other fucking studio I can work at. I'm stuck up there." You know what I mean? So he went to LA first, and man, he's worked on some fucking huge records to date. So I'd like to maybe get Joe Barresi to talk about it. But Harry Chaucer, from the original drummer from Racer X, I forgot to mention him. He just sent me a bunch of movies. So the movie's in 30 frames per second. Normally you would do a movie at 24 frames per second, more cinematic. But it's in 30 frames per second because I kind of felt like it is documentary. You could play it on TV, whatever, but more a mixed frame rate scenario where if I know Scott Earl from the original signing to Shrapnel Records from the band Culprit is recording his interview today on an iPhone.
Oh, wow.
So I felt like not everyone's iPhone, ours do,
Yeah.
the iPhone 12 Pro Max, has 24 frames per second, but man, you're getting into hairy territory there where you're trying to mix frame rates in your editing, and you have a drop frame, the fifth drop frame, and a 24 frame per second if you're mixing it with 30. So I'm like, the movie's at 30. It looks great so far. Super cinematic already, just because of the camera lenses I've used, and I have a really great, my prosumer camera is 1-inch sensor. So it looks amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a dense, pixel content.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, just a little bit you sent me, I mean, looks already amazing.
You could shoot a movie on a fucking iPhone. It'll look amazing.
And they have, they've
have
done the commercials, movies, just to prove a point,
Right.
I mean,
pretty cool.
Can you imagine Steven Spielberg showing up with a freaking iPhone and being like, "Get rid of those Panasonics and those red dragons. We're shooting on the iPhone."
Oh my God, it's crazy. Like we were talking about that too. We'll wrap it up here in a minute, but just talking to Mark Dawson, who, like I said, he's a techie too. He's got a red camera.
Yeah.
And it's like those camera bodies are like 10,000, and then you got to start buying the lenses and you got to maintenance them, and it's just a nightmare. I think my great camera is like 3,500, something like that. And all my other supplementary cameras are less than that, but you can spend a shit ton of money on your production gear, and it all comes down to composition. And I believe the edit is what makes a film. Well, I've looked at so many movies where the edit sucks, or you're like, well, wait a minute, what's with the open-ended editing where they asked a question but they never answered it, So I feel like since I've edited thousands of hours, oh my God, the last company I worked for last year, we did 500 tutorial videos alone that I had to edit, and it's like you get good at editing, man. You get pretty damn good at knowing how to crop in and fix things and color correct, and so yeah, it's gonna be cool.
I mean, I'll just say this: it's like you can spend $30,000 on a red dragon and put that in the hands of somebody who has no idea what they're doing, and it's gonna look like crap. And it's just like guitar gear, right? You put a great guitar in the hands of somebody who doesn't know how to play, and it's gonna sound like a piece of crap guitar. But you put, you still
got to light it.
That's right. Yeah, but you put a horrible guitar in the hands of somebody who doesn't know how to play, and it's gonna sound great. So it's not the gear, it's the person using it. You could, give an iPhone to, like I said, Steven Spielberg or George Lucas, and it's going to be amazing. That footage is going to be incredible. So, people need to spend more time on their technique, whether it's music or whether it's, film or photography or whatever it is they do. Focus on, learning the skill, not so much the gear.
It's a good point. I mean, I have great gear, and I've gotten really good at lighting. Let's put it that way. And this is all talking head stuff. Besides the walking around footage and we're going to do some inserts with pictures and stuff. And I've got a bunch of great pictures from Jeff Martin of Racer X stuff that's never been seen, never been published, folks. So you're going to want to check out this movie because there's rare stuff that I have and have been given the rights to do with it what I will. I can edit it however I want, so it's going to be really crazy good. So for me, this is a passion project that I've always wanted to do, and I'm super stoked for everyone to see it. Bill, what do you got coming up, man? Where can folks find you? What do you got coming up?
You can find me at billanero.com, which is my personal website. That's 3 L's in a row, BILLLONERO, or lanero.net takes you to the same place.
It could be It could be Bill Onero.
It could be. That's right. It could be. RoyalRebelsMusic.com. That's my band. Strap Tight Strap Locks or StrapTight.com. You can find Strap Tight there.
Yeah, man. What about your shows?
Got the show October 10th in Sunnyvale, and then November 17th at the Whiskey in Hollywood, opening for Last in Line with Vivian Campbell and all those Dio guys.
Yeah, man. You got everything up on your website. The Sunnyvale, what club is that?
That's called the Quarter Note.
Quarter Note in Sunnyvale.
Yep, Quarter Note in Sunnyvale.
And then Whiskey in November.
Yeah, and then in March, we'll be playing with Rose Tattoo at the Whiskey. I believe.
Nice.
That's so far that's scheduled, so we'll see. But I get,
fingers crossed.
I think 2 or 3 of them, there's 3 shows, and I think we're only doing 1, but I believe 2 of the shows are sold out already.
Excellent, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very nice. Yeah, so you can find me at, as I said before, gregmara.com. And check out my Instagram at Mara Music or Greg Mara, and Facebook at Mara Music or Greg Mara. YouTube, I'm going to be feeding that bitch like crazy when the new record comes out. It's called Reflexive. Just getting ready to maybe release this first single. I'm mixing it. I'm tracking the whole thing myself. The first single is done. Now I'm just kind of putting the finishing touches on it, and my record will have probably 10 tunes on it. So it'll be a full-length record called Reflexive. And folks, thanks so much for tuning in. Bill, thanks for your time.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me again.
Love you, buddy.
You too.
All right, we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Ciao.